I am digital illustrator Mike Meth.
I'm model and body painter Caitlin St. Angelo.
And I'm writer Frank Barbiere. Welcome to Artistic Awareness.
Hey!
Welcome to episode 9 of the Artistic Awareness podcast, a bi-weekly discussion of the unspoken issues facing artists today. Our guest for this episode is wildly famous and super cute Frank Barbiere, a writer based out of Brooklyn, New York. Frank self-published the comic book series 5 Ghosts that was later picked up by Image Comics, and now writes for Dark Horse Comics, Dynamite Entertainment, Boom Studios, and Marvel Comics. For our topic, we have Be It, and Mike is going to kick things off.
Okay, so welcome to the show, everybody. We have a wonderful show in store for you today. As Caitlin mentioned, we have writer Frank Barbiere today.
Oh, nice.
So,
I heard you
like
do
that?
it in self-correct, but that's fine.
So apparently Frank's name is often mispronounced, so this is a little PSA on how to properly pronounce his name. So Frank, I want to formally welcome you. And,
thank you so much, Mike, and thank you, Kate, for having me.
Absolutely. So we've already listed a lot of your accomplishments and credits, but is there anything we missed? And just tell us a little bit about yourself. What brings you here today?
Well, I've been kind of actively working towards the goal of being a quote-unquote professional comics writer for quite some time, and over the course of last year, I guess, so like 2013 into 2014, it kind of happened, which was crazy, and now, again, as you can see from like the credits, like the ball has been rolling, and I'm really just working to keep that going, and I always like doing podcasts more than any kind of other type of press because it's a time to actually like talk and show kind of who I am much more than just like writing responses. I feel like whenever I write like text responses to most things, it's like, I don't know, it feels really cold and impersonal. So
Yeah.
Which is ironic because you're a writer.
well, I'm not gonna no, dude, like cool questions.
Sup, bro?
I got some V interesting responses coming your way. No, so that doesn't normally happen. So I prefer podcasts. I don't prefer normally seeing myself when I talk, so this is going to be very teachable.
Can you see yourself while you talk?
I can see in the bar down here. Hold on, can I turn that off?
No.
You're going to just have to deal with your own face.
Just
We're
don't
so sorry.
look. Don't look. Nobody else will see you if you're not talking.
It's okay. It's not so bad.
All right, Frank. I've known you forever. Like, I know what's going on in your life and what you're up to. Everybody else doesn't. So what are some of like your current projects? What are you currently working on?
So the project that kind of brought me into comics is, and by and large, not the first thing I ever did, so that should go to show that, again, getting here takes a long time, but was a book called 5 Ghosts, and we are just getting into year 2 right now. We're wrapping up issue number 12, which will be out in like 3 weeks, and it's a big accomplishment because when we started 5 Ghosts, we self-published initially, and I remember saying to Chris, like, if we can just get 5 of these done in the next year, like, that will be great. But we ended up moving to a monthly schedule because we had a publisher and things were going well, so now we have 12 issues, and we're going to roll right into 13. I mean, we take a little bit of a publishing break because the second collection will come out, which is very cool for us because that's really the minute when we can like kind of step back and for a minute see like, oh, this stuff comes out and is happening. So that's a big milestone for us, making 12 issues. And Lauren Affey, our colorist, has been with us for most of the ride, really. And she didn't do the first 2 issues. She came out at the end of issue 2. So it's really cool to have this new collection that will have all her coloring in it as well. And again, we're just really, really happy that we managed to get 12 issues out in the year, which has been really breakneck but cool and taught us all a lot.
Yeah, that's intense.
Chris didn't do issue 6, though, actually. That's so our friend Gary Brown, who also went to Kubert School, and you guys
he
know,
did.
right?
I know Gary.
Yeah, no, so he did issue 6, which was cool because I'd always wanted to work with him as well, and he kind of stepped in and did that so Chris could take a month. But no, it's been crazy, and through 5 Ghosts, I ended up getting a lot of other work as it's done pretty well, and Image has had a really, really good, like, I guess last 3 years already, so, like, people kind of look there to see what's happening, and
you're happening.
They're trying to happen, slowly but surely, but it's funny because a lot of the stuff that's coming out now, like, came out all at once, but had been being worked on for a long while, so a lot of my friends are like, "Oh my God, you're writing everything," and I'm just like, "Yeah, I hope I still have work next year." It's just that it all came out at the same time. So,
what was the journey that you had to take from when you started several years ago, really seriously trying to break into this industry, versus now when you're at the point where like work begets work and it's kind of just one thing after another? What was that in between? What was that journey for you?
Okay.
It was really just learning, like how to do things, because I still have a very like active participation in most of the stuff I work on. I mean, at Image does not have editors. Image does not have. I mean, they have production people who you upload your book and they'll just like put it into InDesign and make sure. But like, I do all my own lettering. I do file prep. I do like the logo dress. Our designer designs the logo dress, but I actually put it on the pages and really have a big hand in everything. And again, I know Chris and Lauren both very well, so we work as a really small, tight team. And
what is the logo dress?
Like the where it says like 5 Ghosts on the front and like the like names and then like issue number 13, like literally like all the like actual copy on the cover that's not hand drawn.
Oh,
so
cool.
like I sit there and put that in every month and make sure everything is the right size and like trim all the files and I learned all to do that from self-publishing, and it's normally you'd have to pay people to do that stuff, especially if Image isn't going to necessarily do it for you, or it does make more work for the design team. And I like that I know how to do that because it still feels a lot like self-publishing to me, which is cool. And the not having editorial is huge because, I mean, if we make a mistake, that's going to be on us, and no one's going to really stop us from doing it.
What do you do with all those loads of free time that you have?
But yeah, that was really teachable, and I'm so glad that it happened after, like, I guess actively trying to break in for about 4 years, because I went through and basically learned as much as I could, and would read a lot of like articles about breaking in, which were a lot more like sparse at the time. Like I feel like there's a lot of really, really good resources now, which
what did those 4 years look like? Like what did those 4 years entail of moving up the chain, so to speak?
Well, working full-time, firstly, because I needed to have money, and certainly this was the first year where I actually got money from comics, which was, again, a huge stepping stone. But even still, like, that's the most difficult thing, of course, and we all know that, is money in any industry, especially artistic industries. But I was working as a teacher, which in of itself is a pretty involved full-time job, but it kind of made me happy to come home and work on stuff and keep things going, because it's like, oh, well, I don't necessarily want to be doing this. I want to be doing comics, so it kind of gave me that fuel. But I also lived at home, and that helped a lot too, because literally all my income went towards making comics, as you have to hire people, you have to pay everyone along the way. You need to pay everyone who's drawing, everyone who's doing design, everyone who's doing art, and that's pragmatically why I learned to do like my own production and lettering, and I used to try to do my own graphic design, but then when I started working with designers,
but you know your limits.
I realized I was real bad at it once the first designer, I mean, I worked pretty much exclusively with a designer named Dylan Todd, who's really awesome, and as soon as he stepped in, I was like, oh wow, I've really been messing this up, like like just using boldface fonts for everything, not a good. Like,
doesn't quite only cuts it for so long. So I want to move into our first little roundtable bit, and
well, first, let's talk about Kate, if you want to talk about what do we actually mean.
Yes. So our topic for this episode is obviously Be It, and the way we kind of came about that, like, I've been friends with Frank for a couple years, and Frank has always, I'm speaking to our listeners now, obviously. Frank has always really impressed me with he's always been very involved. You know, he doesn't just linger behind his computer and, like, you know, wait for stuff to happen. He's always been very, you know, like, front lines, going to cons, talking to people. I remember we were hanging out in New York one time, and you needed to go to a meet and greet, and I'm in, like, the basement of some bar talking, like, rubbing elbows with comics people, because that's, like, what you needed to do. And you've always gone out and, like, done what you need to do to get where you want to be, and been your own, like, best advocate in getting there and your own push. So I've always found that really inspiring, and that's what I mean for the topic Be It. Like, what you want from your life, go and be it, and Frank is an awesome example of someone who does that. So you're welcome. Clap, clap.
If you can't tell by my hobo appearance.
Oh, I missed it. Hang on. Here we go. Delayed.
All right, so we usually know what's up. Okay, so we know the destination we want to reach for the most part. Like, I know where I want to get, what my career aspirations are. However, and I know what I should be going out and doing. I know what actions would get me there, but it's not every day that those things happen. And I don't think it's as simple as like being lazy. And that seems to get in the way for a lot of people. Is like, we know what we're supposed to do, but we don't do it for some reason or another. We know the destination we want to reach, but things are coming up that are keeping us from getting where we want to be.
There's something in the way from that.
Yeah, things like, and I don't think it's that we're always entirely conscious of what those things are. I think we kind of ignore them. But if you really want to take a look at it, for some people, it's like, I'm not good enough yet. I need to be better than I am now before I can approach that person. Or like, I'm not worthy.
I wish I met more of those people, by the way. Because most people feel pretty entitled most of the time. But,
I'm not worthy to be like rubbing elbows with the higher ups yet, or like putting the masterful people of your field up on a pedestal and thinking, you're the lowly peasant of your industry, so what can you possibly do? Or feeling like, I need to do X before I do Y so I can have Z, like making it too linear. So my first question for everybody here basically is, what stops you personally from taking the actions that you know to take? And I think for me, I think I just get a little intimidated, really. The actual conversations that need to take place when you're networking or when you're talking about yourself, that's what it is. Talking about myself is really uncomfortable. So I think just honestly being a little nervous of those conversations. Frank, does that ever come up for you? Because I would honestly be surprised to hear what.
Otherwise, we're canning the whole episode.
Well, I feel like that's the most awkward thing about quote unquote networking, like in like presenting yourself, like it can come off as shitty bragging, excuse me, I'm sorry. It can come off as bragging instead of being like a purposeful conversation about like where your career's at and what your career goals are, especially because most networking things happen in social environments, not necessarily like business settings for like, I think our disciplines. It's not like we go to like network meetups. They'll either be at bars after events or like things like that most of the time. And it gets so easy to have it turn into like, oh, dude just went into business mode. Like you're trying to sell me something now. And I mean, and for artists too, it's like it's sometimes like pulling out your portfolio is like grossly inappropriate. Sometimes you need to be able to tell like, well, does someone want to see what I'm talking about right now? Or like,
how will they know what I do if I don't show them? But if I show them, I'm that guy.
Right.
And
I think that's really interesting in itself. That there's always going to be that fine line. I know that you were talking about, Frank, the idea that, I wish I met more people like that, because there are a lot of, and there are some people who are just genuinely confident, but I think that there is a surprisingly large number of people who it's just a front. That's, they're having their chest puffed out and all that. It's inauthentic because they're dealing with the same stuff, and their way to combat that is by presenting bigger than they actually think that they are.
Yeah, that's actually totally right. Like I feel like most people have that. It's like weird stage fright, and that's one of the compensation methods. And
so for me, because I actively deal with this, even in the podcast with artistic awareness, also as an artist, the idea of I'm not there yet. That's my biggest one. If I was going to talk about with artistic awareness, to reach out to other people, to reach out to big names and things like that. It's like, of course I want to, because I want to make a difference. We all want to make a difference with this project. But at the same time, there's always that little voice in the back of my head, like, well, why should they listen to me? Why would they care about what I have to say?
Like, we're not professional enough. We're not big enough. We don't have enough listeners. We don't have, we're not pro enough, or that
and
kind
as
of
an
thing.
artist, putting my work out there, or going to, for example, Comic-Con. I've been wanting to go to Comic-Con and set up a table for a while now, but I always find a way not to. It's usually convenient, like, oh, well, I missed the deadline or something like that.
It's too expensive.
Right. Usually
it's too
behind
far.
the scenes, it's always something like, I have no business being there. I have nothing to show, or the things I do have to show aren't good enough. So there's always that conversation running the show, and I may, outwardly, I think a lot of us are just so adept at covering that up that you often have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. But these are the things that really make the biggest difference in preventing us from getting what we want. And it's the type of thing that nobody's talking about, and that's really what we're targeting and looking at with artistic awareness.
Yeah, and I think anyone who would not take an opportunity to hear creative people talking is like...
Well, they're jerks.
Yeah, well, you have to learn to be like a student all the time and just be interested in it. You'd think like fundamentally like you'd be interested in like I don't know, like I'm sure everyone who's like kind of even artistic anyway, like loves watching making of stuff, loves watching things like that, and that's always interesting to me. And I think that's the whole thing about learning to approach things and coming into any kind of community setting is you have to be like a student of it and not ashamed of that. Like too many people want to act like, oh, they're already there, like, oh, I deserve success, like check me out. Like I'm always try to be very metered, like, yo, if I can like learn something from somebody, whether they're, I don't know, a crazy, like, super successful published artist, or just, again, someone who's not even quote-unquote my peer, but someone who's, like, even just, like, breaking in or anything. I just really like to talk to people who do the same thing because everyone has, like, a unique viewpoint, and I've met a lot of people like that. It's so nice when you meet, especially very successful people. I've met, and that's the cool thing about comics is everyone typically hangs out in the same circles, especially after shows. You can meet anybody. The people who I really admire and I like are like always listening, always talking, and always just excited about what they're trying to do next. And someone told me recently, I'm not gonna just name drop people, but a very like established writer told me that one of the best conversations she ever had with someone was when she met a very famous artist. He asked her what she was working on, and she started to list like, oh, like I'm doing this, and he's like, no, what are you working on as a writer? And she's like, that was the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me. Then we went and talked. And I always think that's the difference between people who just care about your like momentary like
your credits, like your credit wheel, like your highlight wheel versus like who are you?
Yeah,
to get excited about art again.
And I think that's the big difference. The people who just want to know what you're working on versus the people who want to know like what you're actually doing. And I think you can get that from anyone. And when you meet anybody like from students, you can learn so much. And from teaching, from talking to people, from helping other people, like, and I think that's really the difference between people who truly want to get somewhere versus, and get somewhere in a sense of like, in both success and feeling fulfilled and what to like work on and trajectory. And I don't know, and I'm not trying to say I'm so great for doing that, but I try to just keep it very metered and be very transparent with like what I'm doing, like what success I've had, like where I can be and what I want to be doing. And if you're upfront with that to yourself and then other people, I think a lot of people enjoy talking to people who act like that, and B, like, it makes for better conversation, quite frankly, because if you just like lock up and are like, oh, I can't really talk about what I'm doing, it's real important, this is what I've worked on, there's nothing interesting about that. And that's what really drew me to comics. There's a lot of transparency because it's not, people treat like breaking in like it's secret, but actually like I feel like there's a lot more transparency now. I mean, you can look up people's sales numbers. Like there's no reason to not like
to be cagey.
Talk about things. Yeah, and I know people who like refuse to kind of tell you what they're working on, what they're doing, but I know a lot of people who share information like publicly. Like a lot of people do really cool like blogs and podcasts now. I mean, just like this, where like the conversation helps everybody, and I think that willingness to share and willingness to discuss is really important to get anywhere. And also, like, if those are the kind of conversations you're having with people, an editor, another writer, an artist, those are the people who remember you. That's the kind of networking you should be doing. And yeah, talk about yourself and be excited and be happy, but just be interested and listen. Like most people, like,
that's it. Yep.
And most people who are like successful get pitched at nonstop. Like people are just like, oh, hey man, well if I could just show you this, or, but again, I've just found like,
just be real. Be a real person who does like real work and actually cares about what they're doing, and I think it's refreshing for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and if you know what they're actually doing, like I read the work of my peers actively, and I don't like all of it, of course, but like if I meet one of the people, like I can at least talk about it and like to, because again, getting people's perspective on things is always interesting, and I feel like that's just be a student of what you're trying to do, and not in a reductive way that a student isn't a master, but be interested in it, and you'll typically have a lot more to say, and those are the conversations that you should have when networking, like about what you're trying to do, where you're at, and again, what you like, what you respect, where you want to be, and I think those are the people I've met who do the best quote-unquote networking, because again, you talk to someone like that and they'll be like, oh, well, you should talk to so-and-so, or you should talk to my editor, or you should look at this, and that's the kind of nice organic conversations that, like, at least the comics industry is like really driven on, because once you're in there, like, there's a very small pool of people, and they kind of, once you're vetted, everyone will try to hire you because they look at it. I mean, there's a gentleman, a really nice guy named Charles Soule, who literally he just like was saying like he's going to have 11 books on the shelf, 11 monthly like just releases in September. Charles is also a full-time lawyer who owns his own practice, and he is just like one of the it guys in comics, and the nicest, most quaint dude, and broken the same way. He published a small book on Image and just is approachable, is professional and nice, and it's really panned out for him, and he just kind of presents that all on the surface too. And he wrote a blog post called
there's even like a secret to breaking into most industries, you know? I think there's very few industries where there's actually like, you know, like, how do I break in? I think people overthink it. You just get out there and do the legwork, and you talk to people, and you have those genuine conversations like you're saying, and I feel like people are almost looking for a way around that, because that's too hard. There has to be like there has to be a, you know, formula to doing this, instead of I actually have to get up and like go to cons and talk to people.
I think that there's a reason why those conversations are so few and far between. I think for the most part we know that those real conversations and that real way of being, that's the way to get what you want. But I think that the reason why that's the minority is because that takes that genuine interest, and it takes a lot of vulnerability, because the normal way that we all do things is to go through the motions. So, hey, you know, what do? You know, this is what I'm working on, etc. Because that's what's comfortable. That's what everybody's used to.
That's so like talking about the weather. That's work small talk. You know, talking about the weather isn't going to get you a job. It's not going to get you with like the in crowd. I don't care if it's raining out.
So the next thing that I wanted to touch on, you know, going back to the topic, we are taking a look at what are some of the things behind the scenes that stop us from doing those things that we know would get us where we want to be. And so I think the reason we stumble the way we do is because, I think, Kate, you mentioned that there's this way, this progression that we operate by, that, you know, okay, once I do this, or, you know, once I'm this good and I accomplish this, then I'll be this great person, and when I'm this great person, then I'll have all of these fans and I'll have all the money. And we never, for the most part, get past the do. We never get past the, oh, once I do this, once I do that, because we're intimidated, whatever. So if we take a look at it differently, and, you know, this is just another idea to sort of combat this and make a difference. Instead of going by that progression of, you know, once I do this, then I'll be this, and then I'll have that. Instead of that, to go by, if I was this, so to go from, you know, I'm going to be this, and then I'll do this and have that. But what I mean by that is, you know, let's say I want to be this, you know, amazing illustrator, for example, which I do. But, you know, I have these ideas that in order to be this amazing artist, I need to accomplish all these things. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. And then, but if I really think about it, okay, let's say I do all these things, and then I'm quote-unquote this amazing artist. The only real difference is, like, you know, a conversation that I'm having with myself. That is like, okay, well, these people said I'm good, and this, so now I'm going to relate to myself as a good artist. When in reality, you know, the only thing that's making that difference in my head between I'm a good artist or I'm a failure, I'm not good enough yet, is
it's
what
a conversation you're having with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you can switch from do be have to be do have just by how you're speaking to yourself and your assumptions about yourself. Is
but
that
there's,
like,
there's a really important distinction, because there's a popular way of doing things. There's the expression "fake it till you make it," which I know firsthand. I have done that a lot. As a socially inept kid growing up, and then trying to be social and have relationships and whatnot, you gotta fake it until you make it. And there's something to be said for that. I think that that's a popular way of doing things.
there is validity to it.
Right.
And I like your
I
suggestion
I
better.
see it work all the time, and there's always some fury involved when you see it in a disingenuous way, but it works. Like, I know a lot of people who, again, get their career because they came out like with their chest puffed up and talk a big game, and I mean, it works on people. There's a reason people do that.
Well, yeah.
I think that that's a way to kind of like trick yourself into doing what, Mike, you're telling us we should do, but when you can't, that's kind of how you trick yourself into doing it. It's like, oh, you fake it until you can realize for yourself that, oh, I am being this, you know?
And the distinction
instead of just
is,
being it, you kind of have to like some weird psychology stuff in there.
The distinction is, Frank, you're talking about being able to see through it. And that's because oftentimes when you fake it till you make it, like I'm telling you I'm this amazing artist, but meanwhile I'm saying to myself, no, I'm not. So you can, as human beings, we usually have this innate ability to be able to see, oh, he's lying. He doesn't actually believe that.
I think what you're addressing, which is really important, and something, and it comes down to preference for a lot of people, but I dislike when people say, like, oh, well, I'm trying to be this.
Right.
Like in a conversation. I feel like, hey, if you put a pencil to paper, like, cool, you're an artist. Don't say I'm trying to be an artist. Don't say I'm an aspiring artist. And this is something I address a lot in comics when I talk to people. I'm like, well, in speaking to this, and if I'm speaking over someone right now, please tell me to shut up. I want to finish my thought. But I feel like the one thing you can only ever control is your work. And you can't control perception of your work. You can't control value ascribed to your work. You can't control if it's selling. You can't control if it's cool. And the fact that you're making the work makes you such a thing. And everyone wants to quantify. And I remember like a year ago, like there was this kid I met who was really just like a stuck-up like lawyer who was doing really well. And he was like, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I write comics. And he's like, do you do that full time? And I was like, no, I have a day job. He's like, then you're not a comic book writer. And
well, you are a jerk, sir.
And I wanted to, my book was out on Image at this point, and I was just like, yeah, dude, I guess you're right. Because I wasn't going to sit here and break down, like, oh, just so you know, this is how my industry works, and this is, like, validating. Because people will think the only great quantifier we have in all of great society, like, currently, is if you are rich. People are like, oh, that person must be successful.
Right.
And there are people who that's ingrained into. Like, until I am literally rich from doing something, I am not successful. Or until I don't have a day job. But I feel like that's such a silly, myopic way of thinking. And yeah, like, guess what? Like, we live in a really tricky, like, socioeconomic time. And this leads into one of the biggest detractors from all of us is money. It's like, yeah, if everyone was independently wealthy, we'd all be arting our faces off nonstop. Like, oh,
arting our faces off.
you know what I mean? Like, art is kind of a luxury, like, in society. Like,
it is. But, arting our faces off.
Yeah, well, art your face off. That's the new name of this.
Yep.
On this podcast. Thank you for rebranding us on the fly.
So we do these sound bites with every episode where we pull like valuable quotes or things. That's our best one. I've already decided. Art your face off.
But you know what I mean? I feel like it's, yeah, we all have to eat, we all have to pay rent, we all have to get past things. And this will lead into the, like, surrounding yourself, like, with things you need for success discussion later. But again, that's just the dumbest way. Like, if I see someone who's awesome at the, like, trumpet, and I'm like, yo, dude, like, you're great at the trumpet. If he's like, well, I mean, I have a day job, so I guess I'm not really that valid as a musician. Like, that's just such a dumb way of thinking that we're so wired in by, like, again, a lot of, and I'm not going to go on, like, forget society, but, like, again, it's a societal expectation. It's like, yo, like, just because you're not making $1 million as an artist doesn't mean you're not a valid artist. And that just gets back to, I feel like, fake it till you make it is like one way of saying just like to be the thing you want to be and not be ashamed of it. And like, yeah, talk about your successes, talk about what you're working on, but don't be afraid to be like, well, yeah, like I draw, I'm an artist. Yeah, I play the flute, I'm a musician. Yeah, I do whatever. And I think people are obsessed with labels and that it comes back to that. But But comics is funny because I remember in comics, literally the most famous people in comics, no one knows who they are outside of comics for the most part. I was on a plane with one of the writers once, and it's funny because it's a really famous dude who writes a lot of big books, and I immediately recognized him, and like my face lit up, and no one else on the plane gave a damn. Like no one knew who it was. Like, and I feel like that level of unfame is nice. The fact that there's anonymity there is like, you remember that like, oh, you can like create a weird world where these people are super important, but they're not celebrities, and that really helps.
Yeah.
It's all perception.
Yeah.
And you know, in that same vein, you're always going to have dissent. You're always going to have the people who say, okay, well, you still work a day job, you're not a writer. And
There
you know,
was
that's
great,
always going to be there.
there was this great quote I have to share when you're done, Mike. Go ahead.
Okay. So, you know, the only thing that really makes the difference at the end of the day is whether or not you say so. And that's the biggest distinction between fake it till you make it and actually, you know, owning it. And instead of saying, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to be that, instead say, okay, I am a writer. And as a writer, you know, these are the actions that a writer takes, so I'm going to take those actions. Instead of saying, okay, once I do this and I do that, then I'll be a great writer, and only then will I have access to taking these actions. So why not just, since you're the only one who actually, you know, can say so in the first place, why not cut out that step, be the great writer, take the actions that the great writer would take, and then have the results that you would get, you know, as a result of that. One of them being, there's always going to be that guy who says you're not a real writer.
Yeah, people, and Caitlin, I'm sorry, if you want to say your quote first.
I have to say the quote. It was. I honestly don't remember it verbatim, but it was something along.
Here's the quote.
Oh no! It was something along the lines of, "You could be the greatest, like sweetest, juiciest peach on the planet, and there will still be someone who hates peaches."
I love peaches. Yeah, that was a good one.
No, I mean, yeah, people, haters are gonna hate. Is the street way to say that?
Haters gonna hate.
Haters gonna hate.
But legitimately, people love nothing more than to like crap on something, like, and tell people what they can and can't be. And when I was a teacher, I taught creative writing for a good bit to middle school kids, and like it was insane to me to meet a kid who was like 13 and said like, oh well, I'm not a writer. Like that they already knew at that age, like, oh, like people have predefined expectations of what roles are. And
Caitlin, you have a perfect piece to
I
do. This. Yeah,
go ahead.
After you finish, Frank, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just insane to me that people have like roles defined like that, and it's so easy to sit back and be like, oh, well, you want to write movies? Well, only like 5 people ever really do that, and you can't be that. And my counter argument is like, yeah, but people still get to do that. Like, it's a real job. Like, it's not like I want to say I want to be the first unicorn. It's like, no, I'm just trying to say, like, I want to be, I get it. I used to be a musician, and people always be like, oh, well, getting, like, a record out is impossible. And, like, so many of my friends did it. Like, it's like, no, that's not, like...
You're being a musician because you want to be a musician.
Well, yeah, and don't listen to everyone talk their trash, because it's like, if your goal in life is to, like, do something really like mundane, that's fine, but like that's the kind of thing like, oh, if I want to be a dope accountant, like people are like, that's cool, you can go to college and get that job. But it's like, when they say like, oh, I want to be like a singer or a painter, everyone's like, oh, no, that's, no one can do that. But it's like, yeah, like check out all the people doing that. It's and I feel like that's what leads people to say like, oh, I can't do this, or I'm just an amateur, because it all comes back to just a lot of expectation and like, oh, well, what people are trying to say is it's really hard to make money doing that. And that's the effed up part. Yeah, Caitlin, I'll shut up.
When I was in 3rd grade, we had to do an assignment where we had to draw a picture and write a paragraph about what we wanted to be when we grew up. And we all presented them around the classroom. And one other little girl wanted to be an artist, and I remember she drew an ice cream cone. And cynic 10-year-old me sat back and was like, first off, that's a crap ice cream cone. I didn't say that out loud, but I was totally judging her artwork. And I remember thinking, and besides, how impractical to want to be an artist. What a frivolous life pursuit. I'm 10 years old. I don't know.
Nice. Real talk by 10-year-old Kate.
And so that's 3rd grade. I had already decided that being an artist was a ridiculous notion, and please put that away.
But being a jerk was a good one, apparently.
It was fine, obviously. So,
being a bully, A+, knock it out of the park.
None of this came out of my mouth, I swear. And in 5th grade, there was another girl in my classroom who was a model, which I now, in retrospect, she was probably like, I don't know, some kid model on the front of like the cardboard boxes.
If she's a model, she's a model. Don't
like,
go breaking rank on her.
You're right. But I had recognized in 5th grade, she's much prettier than I am, so I'll never be a model. So by the time, before I got into middle school, I was not going to be an artist, and I was not going to be a model. I am currently employed strictly as an artist and as a model. And it was just about like when that time in my life,
10-year-old kid.
I know, what up kid me, look at this, you don't tell me what to do. So all it took was when I decided I was going to model, I just decided I was going to model. And what do models do? Well, they go look for work over here, and they do this and they try that, and they speak like this and they work, and then I just did those things. And now I've been modeling for 6 years, and I can completely self-sustain on it. It's not like living large, but I just knew what I wanted to be, and I don't know, beat it.
That's a really interesting point.
And I beat it.
Yeah. You're talking about when you first start out, it's tough, but then once you get the reps in, it's easier. And I think the biggest reason why, I mean, yeah, you've done it a couple times, but the biggest thing is the perception change. Is that by doing it a couple times, you tell yourself, okay, now I'm a model.
Yeah, I had to do the fake it till you make it thing, honestly. Right. I had to just pretend I was an artist until I realized I was getting clients consistently, and then realized that I was an artist, Right. But that was, and it really helped me in terms of figuring out how to allow myself to be it, so to speak, to just observe other people who were doing what I wanted to do. Like if one of my current aspirations is that I really would love to teach like business of art or something. So I'm constantly following like video blogs and on YouTube channels and listening to other speakers who do what I want to do, and just observing like, what do these people do in their lives? What do their social media accounts look like? And just do that. If this is what I want to be, I'm going to do this.
That's the productive way to do it versus the like, oh, well, what is the secret? What is the way?
Right.
And I feel like
there's no secrets. There's literally no secrets. Sorry.
It's knowing, no, and I agree. And I feel like that's the difference in mindset between people who eventually accomplish something versus people who don't.
Except sponsor us with tons of money, and we will give you the secret.
Yes.
Have you got like a PayPal account? You can But I mean, there's learning how to do something, but you can never learn success. Like again, and every success story has an element of luck to it, and you can choose to see luck as something that just happens to this blessed person, or
no, you work hard for luck. You work hard to put yourself in the right circles.
Or an opportunity. Luck is a crappy way to mislabel opportunities, because opportunity is out there. I don't care who you are, and that's like just one of my mantras as a person, that no matter what hand you're given until you're dead, like you can find a way to make something work. And
yes, definitely.
And I mean that sounds so like judgmental on everyone, but I'm just saying, especially like in the artistic community, like I know a lot of people who aren't even universally like quote unquote like masters of their craft, but who get great opportunities because they push themselves, they network, and they do what they got to do. And I feel like so much of that is again exactly what we're talking about. Is those people like, and it's so easy, and you feel yourself do it all the time when you see somewhere like, why do they get to do that thing or something like that? And it's so funny because like I said, it's so easy to hate, like so easy to hate on things and be jealous and weird, and teaching yourself to like move past that and to turn it into productive reasoning, like, oh well, how did that person like go about this? And that's part of why I always love listening to like podcasts where people like talk about how they got into something, and there's a lot of really, really good ones now, and again, which is why I also enjoy completely transparently talking about how I came into something, because it's, again, I think for anyone interested, it is interesting and can be inspiring, and a lot of it's so much more mundane than you think.
I think something that's really interesting, I'm listening to you talk, and on Facebook I see a lot of people, giving advice and things, and whenever I hear podcasts or see shows or see people writing things, it's usually one side or the other. And what I mean by that, it's usually people who are, being really sensitive and commiserating, or it's people who are saying, this is what the situation is, get off your butt and do it. And I think that there's this huge demographic that is in between, and they feel kind of alienated by either one of those two. It doesn't need to be mutually exclusive. You can be compassionate to someone's situation and still empower them to take the action. And, you know, just listening to you talk, Frank, that reminds me why we're doing this. And I think that conversations like this plug into that need. That, yeah, we are compassionate because we deal with the same things that you guys deal with. And that doesn't mean that we can't take the actions, but I'm not going to tell you to get off your butt and do this and completely ignore whatever you're dealing with. And it's really an interesting balance to be able to cover all of those areas. And so thank you for raising that point.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, it's just like it's so easy. I feel like people who find any degree of success, the first thing they want to shed is that everyone comes from the same place. Of like, oh, like, guess what? Like, which is why I always say, like, it's like, yeah, like, I lived at home. My life was cool, but, like, there was stuff like, oh, wow, I wish I could, like, make money off my art to do this or that or things like that. And a big thing in comics is, like, that a lot of people who want to get into comics specifically who are writers are immediately, like, beaten back by the fact that they have to pay people. Like, oh, man, you need to pay someone to draw comics? I'm like...
I have, like... brief interjection. I am so impressed, Frank, that you you always paid everyone you worked with. Like you didn't try to stiff the artists that, like, you know, and I think that really contributes.
If my twin brother could have drawn comics, I would have made him work for free. So.
Okay, well, there's limitations, whatever. But you know, I know that you were legit about everything you did. You know, in terms of like be, do, have. When we get to the do part, like you did it right. And that was really impressive, and it really, obviously, it paid off, and it shows.
And another thing that I just came up with really quick, I'm having these epiphanies as we're talking.
No, that means we're having a good conversation.
Yeah. So, you know, another one that I realize is another part of the status quo is you've got these, you know, quote-unquote experts in their fields. They come on to a radio show or a podcast or a show, and here's how I made it, and now things are great. No. You know, yes, you are successful, quote unquote, now, but you are still, you know, all these experts, they still deal with the same exact things, and nobody talks about it.
Every hurdle, there's 100 more hurdles.
Exactly.
Like that's why I say the only thing you can ever control is your work, because if you try to like quantify or think, there's still, you always want to be more famous, you always want to be better, you always see people who are succeeding or getting better opportunities or different opportunities, and it's so easy to just get sucked into that black hole. And when I was breaking in, there was that moment where I got really kind of like bitter, and I was like, well, what the hell? Like, why am I not getting some of these opportunities? Like, why can't I get this to work? Am I just bad at this? And that's, I see so many of my friends get into that pit, and it's such a not a good place to be in. You need to like really like find your way out of that quick, because it's easy to get there and just turn into like,
that's tough. It's tough to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and like pat yourself on the back and remind yourself that you're still in the trenches and get on with it. It's really hard to do that.
We need a new expression for that. Nobody has bootstraps anymore.
Damn. Way to shoot down my awesome analogy.
So that's everyone who's watching this. Think of a better way to say.
If you could please contribute that on our Facebook page, we'd be so appreciative.
Let's you know that. Sorry, the next step that we're going to try and get into are, you know, what are some of these ways? You know, I could go on because all these things are coming up organically from the conversation, but there are points we want to hit.
Yeah, take us back, because I'll sit here and ramble.
So our last little roundtable question was in regards to the be, do, have scenario that Mike pitched us, and we talked about how to be it, and I want to kind of focus on the do it part. You know, the practical application about immersing yourself in the culture, whatever you're trying to achieve, comics or not, whatever your genre is, whatever your industry is. You know, it's not to say it's easy. Like, there's obviously some things we've talked about where things come up that keep you from leaving your house and going to those networking events, or calling so-and-so, or staying late after the convention to, you know, have a beer with somebody, you know, and things that come up about self-worth, or I'm not there yet, I'm not good enough yet, they're better than I am.
What right do I have?
By what right do I have to call myself an artist of, you know, whatever art you're in? But disregard those thoughts and feelings, even if you can only disregard them for a split second, you know, to make that jump and immerse yourself in the culture of what you want for yourself. Go to events, meet people, relate to the masters as just regular people you can have a genuine conversation with. Like Frank said, quit pitching to them, just talk to them, you know. So I wanted to ask you guys, how has immersing yourself in your respective communities made an actual difference for you? I'm going to hand it to Frank first.
I'm throwing a wrench in the plan here.
I need another minute to think about my own.
I feel like having metered expectations and knowing what we were talking about before is knowing what the job or career path you want to do actually looks like in not the like top 5% of that genre. Because cool, there are like people in every medium who are like insanely famous, probably rich, but you can't come in thinking you're going to be that person. Even in your heart of hearts, you want to be that person. That's cool, and that's your own personal drive. But you have to understand what the real lifestyle of that person is. And I feel like that's where like the research and being involved and listening and like finding out about a like career, just like if you want to be like, in my case, a teacher, I was like, okay, I need to get these college credits, get this certification, blah, blah, blah. You need to like take that minute and actually learn what the job you want to be doing is, or else you're going to be like, oh, wait, I only make this much money as person X, or I can't sustain on blah, blah, blah. You need to really know, because guess what? That information is so out there. Like, it's so available, especially now. Like, you can't get into something and be like, oh, wait, I don't make $1 million every time I write a script for hire, like as a writer. Like, or
I do. I don't know what your issue is.
I'm pretty sure Victoria's Secret is just going to call me tomorrow, right? That's how that works?
Well, and the thing is, you can't ever judge yourself against people who get, like, weird, crazy, out-of-the-blue opportunities. Because, yeah, every now and then something crazy will happen to maybe even someone you know or someone in your industry. And, yeah, those moments can be a huge bummer of why not me, but you can't come into expecting that. Like, those, again, are crazy few and far between opportunities, but the normal opportunities that come up for most people who work hard and work towards something will always be there. And I think the number one thing people need to get on, and this was my own problem too, which helped me kind of jump right in, which was very useful, but like understand that things take time and there's no accurate timeline in the arts. Like, again, people break in, quote unquote, when they're like 50. People break in when they're 19. Like, you can't put yourself on a preordained timeline. You need to like be surrounded in something you love and something, well, not even something you love. When it comes to more fiscal things, like you probably are going to have to find a job. Like, as someone in their early 20s, like coming out, like everyone I know, like Lauren, our colorist on Five Goes, like waited tables and like still did that while breaking in, and only really now like also had a day job for a long time, and just now like 5 years into her career like could quit her day job and as an active participant in the place. And even me, like when my our book was out and doing well, but like I still couldn't quit my job, like, and you can let that kind of stuff like mess with you, or you can just look at it of like, oh, like, well, there's no concrete timeline. And again, sometimes you need to make the jumps happen and not be afraid to do things that are objectively scary. But I feel like you need to really just have honest expectations, because no matter who you are, like, things typically progress a certain way. And that's what I mean by really you have to be a student of something and talk to people, because the thing specifically in comics, and as a writer of comics, everyone has the same story most of the time. No one is like, oh, well, then someone showed up and handed me a movie deal out of nowhere. It's like, yeah, we all worked really hard, paid a bunch of people, lost a bunch of money, and tried really hard.
Have you ever had any like really cool experiences or opportunities come from, you know, all that community interaction that you do? Because you've always been great at like talking to people and communicating. And has there ever been, so I went to this I don't know, networking or after party and talked to so-and-so, who told me about so-and-so, and then I got booked by, such and such. Did any of that ever occur for you?
Literally, like, everything outside of it. And there's a lot of actually interesting panels now at Comic-Cons that are called, like, breaking in and staying in, because it's very difficult sometimes to get more work after you have work. Yeah. Again, if you're, like, a hot commodity, yeah, people start coming at you, but there's...
It's like the sophomore slump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I feel like literally, like from an even smaller standpoint, a lot of the stuff I'm doing at some companies were because I was in really good social standing with retailers, who are very important in comics because they're the only ones who are actually ordering your books. Like, I won't get into comics business, but they're the ones who order your books. And I was always really aware, as soon as my first book like that came out in the mass market, to engage them and talk to them and be friendly and talk. And literally a retailer was talking up our book, and a publisher got in touch with the retailer and was like, why do you care about this so much? And he told them, and that publisher ended up hiring.
That's crazy.
That
That's
was
really cool.
From someone people think is so low on the totem pole, like people who are selling your comic book, like who are super important, I don't mean that, but a lot of people don't even think about that part of the equation. That got me more work, by being engaged and a participant in
It's
that.
the butterfly effect.
And I know that there's probably very few instances where you can say, meeting this person at this time led me to this opportunity, but just as a general immersion, like, you have obviously been so immersed in the culture, and you've gotten so much out of it.
Well, even more so, like Five Ghosts getting at Image, I thought it had been rejected everywhere, and we self-published the first issue, and the way it got at Image is someone I had known and spoken to as a normal human put it in front of the publisher after we self-published it and said, oh, hey, these dudes are doing this book, like, it's good, you should actually look at it and think about it. So that was a pure case of someone I never, like, pitched to or pushed on and was like, oh, you should show this to your publisher, you should show this, saw us hustling and did the nicest thing in the world for me, which gave me a comic book career. And that you can't control. You can't force people to do that. And again, yeah, the publisher could have been like, oh, this sucks, no thank you, but they liked it and moved forward. But all the work in the world can't make those things happen. But and that's why I'm always so transparent about that. But we were out there, we were selling the book, like, we were doing it, and people notice that. People notice you being a part of the community, and that's how you start to create those opportunities for you. And I know a lot of people have gone, like, non-traditional routes into even major publishers, and everyone is paying attention at any given time. So that's why I always say you should be involved in your community, and if you are a genuinely nice human who's doing good work, like, people pay attention, and those are the people, when someone asks, like, hey, do you know anyone who's, like, doing, like, something cool we can look at? That's how you get your name brought up in those conversations. And yeah, maybe some people just can't handle that, and unfortunately it is a social quantifier, but it's not like you have to be, like, handsome, charming, or funny. It's just, like, be a decent human.
Except like us.
Yeah. That is the perfect note. I want to wrap up on that note and that piece of advice, because I think that is super key.
Well, hang on. I have one more thing I want to add, because I'm really excited, because I have a really good example of this. And
we will extend this episode just for you.
We do have a little bit of time. You know, one of the things that I'm coming away with from this conversation is that luck is often the byproduct of a lot of hard work. And, you know, an example that I have is I work at the Kubert School. I teach at the Kubert School, which teaches comic book illustration, other types of art. And so an example of hard work meeting luck is that, you know, as a digital illustrator, you know, I've been busting my butt for a long time using Wacom tablets. That's what I use to do my illustrations and digitally paint. And you know, I've been working at the Kubert School now, and I find out that maybe a couple months ago, one of the sales reps from Wacom is coming to speak at the school. Oh, and nice. So she comes and she's doing, you know, a presentation talking about all the products, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, this is a really great opportunity for something. Should I say something? Should I not say something? So the opportunity was afforded to me that she was there. I had no say in that. But then it was up to me to say, okay, I'm going to stick around afterwards. You know, I'm going to talk to her. And so I talked to her and I say, hey, you know, I loved your presentation. I was wondering if I could talk to you about possibly working as a demonstration artist for the company. And then, you know, I was met with, yeah, sure, just, you know, send me an email, attach some pictures and your resume. And then it took, you know, a little extra, because normally if left to my own devices I would say, okay, and I know what that looks like, you know, it's the runaround. But instead I decided to say, hey, you know what, I actually have my portfolio on me, would you be willing to take a look? And she took a look and she was impressed, and as a result of that conversation, I got an opportunity to start working as a demonstration artist for Wacom, which it's absolutely the situation, the opportunity was luck. But I also had to work my butt off in order to have the portfolio that would make the difference.
Yeah.
And then I had to, get outside of myself.
Have that conversation.
Right. And not just fake until you make it.
After she kind of tried to, push you off a little bit, to be consistent, to follow up.
I had to be it.
And even that working at the school, which is both a creative thing you have to be good enough to teach people ostensibly how to draw, but also what can I apply and surround myself with? By teaching art, that's a practical application of something I love and I'm involved in the community. And that all comes full circle. It's not a mistake of when things like that happen. And someone could just be point at that and be like, oh, what a crazy lucky thing to happen. It's you realize there's 40 planned events that you controlled that led to that. Yeah, it wasn't someone walked into your living room and was like, yo, dude, you a digital artist?
I think when you recognize the work that goes into quote-unquote luck, you can kind of cut the victim BS, you know, where it's I've never been lucky before. This situation's never fallen into my lap. Woe is me, but that gives you a sense of control over taking actions to create situations that will give you opportunities instead of just sitting back and being like, wah, wah.
And if something falls into your lap, that's great. That's
awesome. Run with it.
But there's also something to be said that by putting the work in and then having something lucky happen, you've put all that work in, so it's an authentic victory. You know how to back it up. Where if you're just kind of something freakishly falls into your lap, I think that is an easy way to get one of those one and done type of things. Where it's a flash in the pan, and now. Let me think of another metaphor. No, it's a one-time thing, but then
prospector's long gone,
right.
All right?
But then you don't have you didn't put in the hard work to back it up. Luck is only as great, it only goes as far as the work that you've put in to take it to the next step.
And taking it further, opportunities are only as good as you are able to handle them.
Right.
If I was 14 and someone was like, cool, write me a novel, couldn't have done that or had it been successful in any way versus now if someone says, oh, well, pitch me a new comic, I know how to construct the pitch, I can speak American English and write it, I know what they expect, and again, being prepared is half the battle, and you can do all that preparedness on your own, and quite honestly, it makes you feel part of something to again, when people are like, oh, well, where's the value in going to art school, it's I don't know, being part of a community and learning how to draw and doing it every day, that's valuable. Last time I checked,
right.
Things like that. You just once you get past that quantification and thinking that the world is a mystery where good things only happen to random people, you can start kind of doing that purposeful deconstructing and surrounding yourself with
to create your own luck.
Yeah, absolutely.
And on that note, am I actually allowed to end this now?
Nope. We're just going to stare at each other awkwardly. Just start staring.
So, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/artistic awareness. We are on Twitter with the handle @artpodcast. Subscribe to us on YouTube where you can get this episode and all of our previous ones as well. Watch out for an announcement of our next episode and details on how you can participate. So Frank, where can people kind of keep up with you and your work as you're becoming super crazy famous?
At your house.
Yeah, come to my home.
Please give us all your personal address and phone number.
Social.
All right, so write this down. No, I operate my own content branding is Atlas Incognita, and that's my Twitter. It's @Atlas Incognita, which is ATLASINCOGNITA.
Yeah, don't go crazy. Yeah, we'll have this in the show notes, so you don't have to.
Okay, good. Yeah. I was gonna say, I mean, it's not really the kind of thing I normally say out loud and people understand, but also I put a lot of stuff on Tumblr, fjbarb.tumblr.com is my Tumblr. You'll see that in the show notes. But again, I mean, I'm pretty easy to find.
Yep. And another thing, just a quick addition. It's not a formal announcement yet, but we're going to be reopening our Facebook group. We had a group open for a while. That's how this whole thing started. And then we moved over to our our official business page, our Facebook Artistic Awareness page, which is great. But I think one of the things that has done, it's great because it allows us to consolidate all of our official news and updates and things like that. But one of the things that we don't get with that is that, that really great community interaction where everybody has their say and it's just as visible. So I think I think one of the great things to do would to bring that Facebook group back and to to facilitate some more conversation, because it's belabored at this point, but this thing lives and dies with the community. So that's that piece. What I want to do is I want to thank you, Frank, because this conversation has been really wonderful. I know that. Yeah, and we've gone off topic a lot just because the nature of the conversation. When you have a good conversation, it lends itself to a lot of tangents. So I want to thank you.
For sure. Well, and that's why I like talking about this stuff, because it is actually one of the best ways to also get out of a rut for some people, is talk about what you're doing, and why every writer and artist will say have writer circles or art communities, and still, I feel like that's the more you can talk about something you're doing, the more it will feel like you're doing it as well. And by and far, a lot of these jobs,
by being on the podcast.
Well, yeah.
Be it, Frank.
And by and large, I feel like a lot of these jobs are very insular, and you kind of get stuck in it. But you got to go be it with friends.
Thank you so much, Frank. I really appreciate you coming on with us. It's been awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys again for tuning in. Just stay tuned for updates on the next episode. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Caitlin. So on behalf of me and Caitlin and Kevin and Frank, thank you guys, and we will see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.
Hang on. Hey! All right, goodbye, guys.